Welcome back, everybody. First episode for 2026 for Pod Like a Girl. I'm so happy to have you back with me. I hope that you had a positive end to 2025. I know it was a really mixed bag. I know that a lot of people are really happy to see the back of it, but I hope that that chapter closed on a positive note for you. It was a really mixed bag for me. Really positive stuff career-wise, work-wise, moving down the coast to focus on some of the stuff that I have been working on, which I can't tell you about yet, but it is all coming. Obviously, I was able to do all my cute t-shirts. This is one we've got coming out next week, The Bear Would Never, coming in a few different colors. But this one's my favorite, the forest green for sure. Never sure why I do this. I think this is a comforting thing, but see myself do it in videos all the time. And some other things that are big projects, which I'm really, really excited about, which I think would not have been possible for me to focus on if I hadn't come down here. And that was the purpose. Very quickly after I came down here, got into a relationship. That was not the plan whatsoever. And sadly, that ended with a breakup. That was really challenging. Had some legal stuff, which was really challenging, but learned a lot about myself. Learned so much about what's important to me, where I want to go, wanting to meet somebody who is the right person for me is sort of higher on the list than it's ever been, which feels incredibly exciting and hopeful. It just feels like this lovely new bit of color in my life. Do you know what I mean? And thinking about probably going back to Sydney in March. Came down here to do 12 months. I'm so glad that I did it. Have hesitated, have thought about staying down here, but I really think Sydney is the right move for me. I'm going to go and find my wife and then we're going to come back down here. If anyone would like to apply. I'm kidding. That is a joke. It has obviously been a very interesting start to the year. We're only 3 weeks in and there is already some pretty heavy, dark stuff going on. So I wanted the first episode to be something that I need, which is a bit of healthy distraction. And don't let anybody tell you that if you need to distract yourself healthily, that is you being avoidant or not being an active participant in what's going on in the world, because that is not how the nervous system works. That is not how to be a long-term sustainable participant, not only in your life, but in how we show up at important moments or for other people. And MAFS is coming back. So I was like, what do I want to talk about today? Do I want to talk about Trump wanting to invade Greenland? No. Do I want to talk about the new laws which have been introduced in Australia, which look like they're going to restrict our democratic right to protest? No, I don't. It's all I've been watching and listening to. I might talk about it later, but today I want to talk about MAFS. I have some predictions about what is coming. I have had a look at who the participants, I was about to say contestants, because that's really actually what it feels like. It feels like Hunger Games Love Edition. And I have some predictions because they have learned nothing. I mean, they have learned nothing in terms of being an ethical show and producing it ethically, but they've learned a ton about how to basically create fireworks in a tinderbox and mess with people's emotional and mental health for our entertainment. I just am leaning into it this year because what has happened to me every other year is that I will absolutely delude myself into the idea that this is not television programming for me. And I will say, I'm not going to watch that. Absolutely in no world am I going to watch Married at First Sight. And then YouTube or TikTok starts to feed me the clips. And then I find myself on the playlist of the clips. And then I find myself going, well, I can't make a proper psychological or academic assessment here until I go and watch every single episode. And I'm 30 behind at that point. And so that becomes my whole life. So now I'm just getting ahead of it. I'm just not deluding myself into thinking that this isn't going to happen anyway. But especially after last year, with the escalation of really concerning behavior from particularly like the male participants, with the violence that we saw from Paul, and that had been predicted, that this is going to happen. This is totally avoidable, but it isn't if there isn't some kind of intervention from production in terms of how they produce this show, who they choose to bring on, what standards they set, not just in terms of how the experts deal with this stuff, or the other contestants. I always find that really interesting that they kind of put the onus and the responsibility back onto the other participants to be like, you need to hold each other accountable. And it's like, they don't have duty of care to each other. You have a duty of care to them. And I have some behind the scenes tea from someone who I know who works in the industry from a legal perspective, which is that as part of the contract that the participants of MAFS signs, they have a huge contract that they sign, and there's this big red piece of paper in there that basically says, if you sign this, we are totally able to ruin your life. That's summarizing. That's not the exact legal terminology, obviously. But there is a big blaring red piece of paper which outlines these are the things that could happen to you as part of this show. These are the things that could happen as a result of the edit that you get, as a result of how this is promoted, as a result of who you're paired with. And we have absolutely no liability. And here, sign on the dotted line. But that doesn't mean that they don't have a duty of care unless they choose not to, because again, they're not exactly doing this stuff ethically. And having a look at who they've picked this year, it is just so blatantly obvious now that this is purely for entertainment at the peril of the people who put themselves onto this show. And I just have some thoughts about what this is going to look like. So we're going to go through who's going to be on there and some of those predictions. But I want to talk about this Brooklyn Beckham statement that came out, because how it's being positioned, not just what he wrote, but how it's being spoken about, how the women in this story are being spoken about is so interesting to me. Interesting in the sense that it's just all too predictable. But for a bit of background, so there seems to have been this building tension between Brooklyn Beckham and his parents and siblings for a couple of years now since he got married. So he's the eldest of their kids, got married to Nicola Peltz, whose parents are billionaires, and from what I can tell, quite conservative. Not sure if that's part of it, but I know that her father invited Donald Trump to one of their engagement parties. And there has been this subliminal kind of messaging going mostly over social media, with siblings unfollowing siblings, posts being made, comments being made under photo, like all kinds of stuff that is just bizarre if it's for each other. To be sending these passive aggressive messages to each other over social media just seems really unlikely to me. It seems much more likely that it is for the public. And usually you see that stuff with breakups, you see it with celebrity like marriage breakdowns, you see this hinting at something that's going on, but this is a whole ass family who are engaging in very millennial passive aggressive social media behavior. I want to claim that for millennials, that we were the originators, we were the pioneers of cringe online subtweeting, passive aggressive messaging. That we used to have the Facebook status feature should never have been given to us. We violated it, we abused it, and we humiliated ourselves with it. The amount of times we would put, thinking about someone or thinking about how that girl in high school shouldn't have, and it wasn't even vague in any way. It felt vague. It felt like we were doing something really clever. It was literally just like tag her, put her photo up, and just say what you have to say. We would do it through the songs we put on our MySpace pages, how we would organize our top friends on MySpace. Unbelievably passive aggressive messaging through the top friends feature. And I think it's one of the worst things we've contributed. I think millennials have done a lot of good. I don't think this is one of them, because now grown adults in family setups are doing it. Well, that all changed when Brooklyn Beckham popped on, I believe it was his Instagram stories, to put up 7 slides of a statement about why there has been this rift. I am rarely blown away by celebrity gossip. It is really interesting to me. This was interesting to me for reasons I'll get into, the dynamics at play here. But here's his statement. I have been silent for years and made every effort to keep these matters private. Debatable. Unfortunately, my parents and their team have continued to go to the press, leaving me with no choice but to speak for myself and tell the truth about only some of the lies that have been printed. I do not want to reconcile with my family. I'm not being controlled. I'm standing up for myself for the first time in my life. So I think that some of the narrative is that he's been controlled by Nicola Peltz or by her family, and that is why he's become estranged. I've also seen people talk about the fact that when she dated Anwar Hadid, Yolanda Hadid's son, that something similar apparently happened. But again, we'll get to my thoughts on how even that is being spoken about. For my entire life, my parents have controlled narratives in the press about our family. The performative social media posts, family events, and inauthentic relationships have been a fixture of the life I was born into. Recently, I have seen with my own eyes the lengths that they'll go through to place countless lies in the media, mostly at the expense of innocent people to preserve their own facade, but I believe the truth always comes out. It's giving very Prince Harry, Meghan Markle to me. We want privacy, but also here's this whole statement which totally erodes any privacy we had left. My parents have been trying endlessly to ruin my relationship since before my wedding, and it hasn't stopped. My mum cancelled making Nicola's dress in the 11th hour, despite how excited she was to wear her design, forcing her to urgently find a new dress. Some of this has been discussed. There is a Vogue article where it's stated that she was in talks with Valentino designing her dress for more than a year or something before the wedding. But as we know, celebrities love to spend money on things they already have. So why one wedding dress? Why not 5? And why not 5 versions of those 5 as backup? So who knows? It could be that it was a dress that she was going to wear for 10 minutes between the ceremony and the reception to walk between venues. Weeks before our big day, my parents repeatedly pressured and attempted to bribe me into signing away the rights to my name, which would have affected me, my wife, and our future children. They were adamant on me signing before my wedding date because then the terms of the deal would be initiated. My holdout affected the payday, and they have never treated me the same since. During the wedding planning, my mum went so far as to call me evil because Nicola and I chose to include my nanny Sandra and Nicola's nonny at our table because they both didn't have their husbands. The night before our wedding, members of my family told me that Nicola was not blood and not family. Well, I hope so. Since the moment I started standing up for myself with my family, I've received endless attacks from my parents, both privately and publicly, that was sent to the press on their orders. Even my brothers were sent to attack me on social media before they ultimately blocked me out of nowhere this last summer. It just is giving incredibly juvenile. My mum hijacked my first dance with my wife, which had been planned weeks in advance, to a romantic love song. In front of our 500 wedding guests, Mark Anthony called me to the stage, where in the schedule was planned to be my romantic dance with my wife, but instead my mum was waiting to dance with me instead. She danced very inappropriately on me in front of everyone. I've never felt more uncomfortable or humiliated in my entire life. We wanted to renew our vows so we could create new memories of our wedding day that bring us joy and happiness, not anxiety. So this was the first indicator to me that we are making this about Victoria Beckham. It's not really about the family. It's certainly not about his father. It's about his mother. It's about Victoria Beckham. So we're going to circle back to that, as I've said. My wife has been consistently disrespected by my family, no matter how hard we've tried to come together as one. My mum has repeatedly invited women from my past into our lives in ways that were clearly intended to make us both uncomfortable. Despite this, we still travelled to London for my dad's birthday and were rejected for a week as we waited in our hotel room trying to plan quality time with him. He refused all of our attempts unless it was at his big birthday party with 100 guests and cameras at every corner. When he finally agreed to see me, it was under the condition that Nicola wasn't invited. It was a slap in the face, which is backing up my belief that this is aimed at his mum. My family values public promotion and endorsements above all else. Brand Beckham comes first. Family love is decided by how much you post on social media or how quickly you drop everything to show up and pose for a family photo op, even if it's at the expense of our professional obligations. We've gone out of our way for years to show up and support at every fashion show, every party, and every press activity to show our perfect family. But the one time my wife asked for my mum's support to save displaced dogs during the LA fires, my mum refused. The narrative that my wife controls me is completely backwards. I have been controlled by my parents for most of my life. I grew up with overwhelming anxiety. For the first time in my life since stepping away from my family, that anxiety has disappeared. I wake up every morning grateful for the life I chose and have found peace and relief. My wife and I do not want a life shaped by image, press, or manipulation. All we want is peace, privacy, and happiness for us and our future family. So if we look at the Prince Harry, Meghan Markle blueprint, which also has a lot of misogyny in it, this doesn't work. This will probably lead to a book deal. There will probably be a Netflix series about it, but it is not going to lead to peace and privacy whatsoever. And it's really sad. Like at its core, it's a family breakdown. It's always incredibly sad when that happens. And it's complicated. It's really complex. And it is generally just like not for public consumption because the public is never going to have all the information. And what therefore happens is that these really simple narratives get created. And the simple narrative here is the one we see all the time, which is it's either a difficult, controlling, and jealous mother-in-law, or it's a difficult, controlling, and jealous daughter-in-law. And in this instance, we have both. And the statement is mostly talking about Victoria. Even where it's not talking about Victoria, it is so clearly talking about Victoria Beckham, with the lion's share of the responsibility being placed at her feet. And David Beckham just gets like a free pass. He gets a brief mention without really putting it at his feet, whatever he thinks he's responsible for, because it really just sounds like he's lumping it all at the feet of his mother. That is just a tale as old as time. It is a trope. It's a stereotype as old as time. On the other hand, there is obviously this increasing awareness of breakdowns in families like this between children and particularly their parents, and children choosing to become estranged from their parents for their own well-being, for their own mental health. And that I completely understand. And that's why we can't make any value judgments here. We can't say which one it is. But the telling of the story is always really interesting to me, how it's positioned, who's villainized, who's innocent, and who is just kind of like neutral in the background. Brooklyn, in the telling of this story, is this innocent kid stuck in the middle of these two, depending on which way it's told, villainous women. And then the other parent, the man, is just kind of like there in this neutral beige background and barely gets a look in. That's in how he's telling the story. That's in how the media covers it. That's now in how commentators are covering it. Very little mention in terms of the villains here other than the two women who are involved. Like I said, at the end of the day, it's a really sad family breakup, and it is none of our business. And this just doesn't go well for anyone. It doesn't go well if Victoria chooses to respond, or if the Beckhams choose to respond in any way. It doesn't go well if other people ring in and speculate. I've seen that a guest at the wedding has come out and confirmed that there was some kind of inappropriate dancing, or kind of co-signed what Brooklyn is saying about the dance at the wedding. It's so strange that we have access to this information. It is so bizarre. But I do appreciate a throwback to some really unhinged millennial online behavior. As always, just look at these stories with a bit of nuance, read the headlines with a bit of nuance, take into account how this is all oversimplified. It's always got to be a woman's fault. It's always got to be that she's flattened down to this villain archetype. And maybe it's more complicated than that. Maybe everyone's participation makes it a bit more complicated than that. Speaking of dysfunction, MAFS is coming back on the 2nd of February, and we can't wait, can we, folks? Especially after seeing who is going to be participating. Because one of the key criticisms of MAFS is that it is just becoming clearer year after year that this is absolutely about generating drama. It is about generating fights, arguments at the dinner party, cheating scandals. And I have a real concern that one of the bisexual contestants is going to be used in that way this year. I really, really hope not. It is clearly just to generate entertainment. And I wish that they would just step away from any idea that it is anything else. And that is not to say that there isn't potential for like beautiful stories to be told on reality TV when it comes to dating. I think if you look at the Australian bachelor, bachelorette success rate of relationships, I think that we're doing pretty well. I think you've got a number of those couples who are still together, have been together for some time. I don't think the same is true of MAFS. And that is not to say that the bachelor, bachelorette is ethical, but clearly they're trying to tell some kind of story, or there's some kind of compatibility which is taken into account. Of course, they throw some people in there who are meant to be disruptors and are clearly just there to gain attention and to build a following and all that kind of stuff. If you watch the old MAFS episodes, it did seem more genuine. If the producers weren't genuine, then who they were putting in there, that they seem to be much more genuine in their aspirations to meet somebody. What seemed to change and what has happened over the last few seasons is the inclusion of these douchebags, especially these traditional alpha male manosphere following douchebags. That has got the biggest reaction from people like me, from women who watch my kind of stuff, from women who are consuming this stuff. That's what we react to. That's what the headlines are about. That's what the content is about. And I'm an absolute participant in that, which is very snake eating its own tail. They've figured out that this is what gets us to talk, is these men who exhibit these concerning behaviors, viewpoints, and last year, violence. That then increases the popularity of the show. And so the next season, that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to put more of these guys in there. And that seems to be precisely what the case is again this year. Because when you read the bios of these guys, it is so clear that they have gone digging for red flags and made a point of putting them into these paragraphs. Of everything they could choose, this is what they've picked. So there are 9 guys, and I think I've marked 2 as possible green flags. I haven't even given them full green flag endorsement. The rest of them are red flags. I think one of them is like neutral. And we're coming in hot with Chris, who I've marked in my notes as the reddest of red flags. He does have some competition though. He's 31, he's from Victoria, once a tradie, now a boss. Chris loves telling people what to do and has little patience for people who can't do their jobs properly. Sounds like a wonderfully patient partner and someone who you want to have children with. Children who generally need to be told what to do and get things wrong a lot of the time. Known to be a boy's boy, he doesn't have any platonic friendships with women. These are things he has shared about himself. He knows these things about himself. Probably that indicates we haven't had a lot of practice at relating to women, at seeing them as human and equal to men. In past relationships, Chris has found it difficult to compromise. Now that he is in his 30s, he doesn't feel there is much real room for himself to change. So we're coming into an experiment where one of the requirements is to be open to self-evaluate and redirect. Apparently, that's not going to be happening with Chris, which sounds like a fantastic person to pair with any woman who signed up for this process. Chris describes himself as honest, upfront, sometimes controversial for the sake of it, even better, but a man who will bend and twist the truth if he needs to avoid issues in the relationship. Excellent. We're 13 seasons in. Oh, girls. I hope that you have a really good therapist. Ultimately, though, he is a lover. And when he finds the girl he has been looking for, he is a big softie who can fall quickly. That is usually code for love bombs you, shows you a different version of himself before you get to know the previous paragraphs. While Chris is skeptical of the experiment and the experts matching him up with the right person, he is hoping to be proved wrong. You know what, Chris? I'm skeptical for your participation in this too, highly. And I think that my prediction that you're going to be the problem guy, like the central problem, you know, the ones that we've come to know over the past few years who women have loathed. I think there's a good chance that you could be the winner for that slot. And I don't think that you're going to be proved wrong. And I don't think I will be either. So that's Chris. Now we go to Philip. He's another one of my faves. I want you to leave in the comments the word manosphere when you figure out that that's the content he's probably consuming 99% of the time. So Philip is 37. He's from Victoria. He's a carpenter. Philip swears by a strict routine of waking up early, going to the gym, and having a 3-minute cold shower every morning. Have you written manosphere in the comments yet? By accomplishing all this by 6 a.m., he feels like he has already won the day. After serious reflection, Philip is ready to open his heart again. He feels like he has done the work and his life is on track. The only thing missing is a partner and a family. Philip is looking for a traditional relationship where men take on the role as providers and women are the carers and mothers, and only one person is getting paid. Philip admits he can be picky and sometimes stubborn, but he has come so far in life and worked very hard to get here. He is hoping the MAFS experiment can find him his perfect match. Now, there is actually a woman who has signed up for this who is looking for a traditional relationship. Who wants to bet that Philip is not matched with her? It is expressly stated in her summary that that is what she's looking for. My prediction is that is not who Philip gets paired with. It's going to be one of the other women, the remaining ones, whose profiles all pretty much say that they're outspoken, they're ambitious, they're independent, they're looking for a partner, like a true partner. And these are the guys who they've signed up for this show. My other favorite is Stephen. I mean, truly, most of these guys are red flags. I'm just picking a couple of my favorites. Stephen is 34. He's from New South Wales. He's a marine technician. Now, it all starts great. It all starts great. A self-described goofball, Stephen is a fun, loving guy who enjoys adventure and isn't afraid of being silly. For most of his 20s, Stephen was in a heavy metal band, chasing the dream of becoming a famous rock star. Now he runs his own company fixing boats. He has put business first, but recently found himself as one of the only single blokes left in his group. Dating hasn't come easy to Stephen. He finds the dating world uncompromising, feeling that women have a never-ending checklist. He has struggled to get a foot in the door of the dating world. Personality is paramount for Stephen in a partner. He wants a woman who is ambitious, easygoing, and won't be offended by his jokes. Can't wait to hear these jokes, Stephen. Can't wait to hear what all of these uptight ladies are getting their knickers in a knot about. So that's, again, just like a sample. It's only a couple of them, but I think I marked 7 out of the 9 as red flags. And they consistently have that same feature of like, they're uncompromising. They want a woman who is just basically supporting character, laughs at the jokes, supports them in their ambitions, isn't too needy, like isn't requiring these things from a relationship that most women require from a relationship in terms of what they're looking for in a partner. What frustrates me so much is that these are the kinds of men these women are coming on this show to get away from. Like these are the men they're having trouble with in the wild, and now they're being shacked up with them and tethered to them and having it put on television. But I do have to go back to the idea, like, this is the 13th season. We now know what happens with this stuff, how you can be signing up for this thinking that these production teams have any kind of benevolent intention, some kind of matchmaking, true love intention behind what they're doing. I just don't know that you could have seen even one of the more recent seasons and thought that is at all what's going on, let alone the big honking red piece of paper in that contract which says we can take it upon ourselves to ruin your entire life, and you're signing that away and we have no liability to you if that is in fact what happens. Because yeah, you look at the women and they seem great. I mean, I date women, not men, so I might be biased, but they're really accomplished, interesting, independent, outspoken. There's one who wants to be with a traditional man, Stella. I guarantee you she is not going to be paired with the traditional guy. It is going to be as explosive as it possibly can be. Something else that was interesting is that one of the women who is participating, she is bisexual. And I was quite excited when I saw that, because I think MAFS UK just did a season where they paired 2 women. It sadly didn't turn out for them, but obviously representation is so important. So when I saw that they had a bisexual participant, I was like, oh my God, how many men and how many women? It's clearly 9 men, 9 women. So I don't see that being a choice that they're going to make to pair her with a woman, even though I think it says in her relationship history that she has had relationships with 3 women and 1 man. I could be wrong, but the math ain't mathin' if that is what they end up doing. And I just really hope that that is treated with respect. That I also don't have a lot of faith in, that they're not going to sexualize that and try to capitalize on that and lean into stereotypes or allow for treatment of that person, which is really gross. I'm hopeful, but not because I've seen any demonstration that I should be. So I'm on the bandwagon. I am not going to be recapping everything, but when I have something to talk about with MAFS, we will. And we'll do some more of these kind of like pop culture, lighter touch, bit more relaxed topic kind of episodes, because I need them sometimes, talking about like heavy eating disorder stuff, talking about heavy stuff in all these other topics that we talk about. I think it's good to just keep it light sometimes, and we can solve the world's problems in another 45-minute slot. I'm wearing one of my new little tees, the Bear Would Never. How cutie patoote is he? These are not available yet. They will be next week, next Thursday, the 29th at 5 p.m. So keep an eye out for that. They come in forest green, a really lovely blue, a berry pink, and black. And it's just a little Bear Would Never. Part of the proceeds are still going to What Were You Wearing? They're going to be our nominated charity for the first 12 months of the shop. But this is the same style of tee as the Beautiful and Difficult tee, which are all still available. Resist to Hood, Beautiful and Difficult, Decent Men, they're all still available, but this is on one of the really soft, buttery teas. It'll be available next Thursday. And sending you all so much love, sending you all the best vibes for 2026. Like I said, I am feeling hopeful and optimistic despite some of the reasons why that might seem naive. And I will see you all in a couple of weeks with another episode. Talk to you soon. Bye.